Should we play the blinking game? Who's going to blink first? You blinked. YouTube family, we've reached episode 12 of Discouraged to Willing out of 12 episodes. Can you believe it? It's the end, but the beginning of an end, which is the beginning of something new. That made sense. We have a really powerful topic today, and it seems fitting for the ending of such a potent, rich, and juicy series that Discouraged to Willing has been. So as you would have seen, the opening quote of this episode was from Gandhi. And funnily enough, this was the original quote from which the paraphrased version derived, which is the one we typically attribute to Gandhi, that being, be the change you want to see in the world. Ain't what he actually said. Fun fact, Google it. Because Google's always reliable, right? Yeah, but anyway, I looked up multiple resources. Fact is... Sorry, I'm in a kind of silly mood. Anyway, fact is, these words, be the change you want to see in the world, is only giving us part of the story of the original quote, which is what you just saw. If you want to return to that opening quote, just go back and come back to where we are now. So yeah, read that again if need be. But essentially the meaning of his actual words direct us much deeper. They're guiding us to do the inner work that we often shy away from. The inner change beyond simply wishing, like wishful thinking, or visualizing, which can often be bypassing. The real change occurs when we go within and do the work of inner transformation. And that inner transformation, it's not scripted. It looks different for everyone. Discouraged to Willing has many useful and valuable resources in order to do that inner transformation work, or at least start. But it doesn't end there. After willingness, there is necessary action, right? It doesn't end with willingness. But you need willingness in order for there to be action. So to examine ourselves openly, honestly, vulnerably, and to purge out insecurities, unnecessary woundings that we've just been holding on for too long, even intergenerational wounding that we've been holding for the lineage, and we don't need to do that anymore because we're conscious of what it is so we can disentangle from it. So yeah, there's a necessary purging out that comes from doing the inner work. And so if you've noticed, the title of this video is called It Only Takes One. And so that's kind of poetic, kind of nice. And you're probably like, Sophie, what do you mean, honey? And what I mean is that it takes one flame to start a fire. One little matchstick can even create a bushfire. Huge fire. an inferno of radical transformation. And often with bushfires, we don't necessarily see that as a good thing, and typically it's not. However, the element of fire is a very transformative element. So we're going to briefly reference the element of fire in this video. Essentially, if you don't care about the fact that, or at least if you don't even recognize, you haven't been given this valuable, necessary information that your flame matters, that your flame can actually send ripples of change throughout not only just your personal universe, but those of others that you're connected to, then where that leads us is waiting for the other to do the thing, to act on our behalf, waiting for the world outside to change, instead of us changing our mindset to one of self-responsibility, amongst other things, to one of creation, so that nothing is stopping us, and that we're not waiting a lifetime for some kind of authority outside to be the one that gives a permission slip to the whole world to change. And yes, I'm not undermining the fact that there are bigger elder powers that are working in the seeming background, the proverbial background, and it's foolish to play God, so to speak. But what is true is that you have so much more power than you even realize to create change and transformation in your life and in your community, and by extension, the world, if you really want to go that far. But you can. One person has a massive impact. One little droplet in the water sends ripples out far greater in size than the actual drop of water. The fact of the matter is, individual actions create ripples of change. So may this video be a anchoring on some deeper level in some part of your being and your body and your breath that your flame matters. That your flame, even if it just seems like a tiny ass flame on a matchstick, you can still create a fire of change. So in this video, we are going to explore initially the symbol of fire. We're going to explore the power of one with self-responsibility. We're going to speak about the key of communication, confidence as a catalyst of change, for example, of growth, whatever it might be. We're going to touch on breaking the chains of shaming so that you can access self-worth, so that you believe that you do matter and what you have to say and what you have to contribute matters. A bit about creating a collective fire of transformation. A bit about addressing cultural wounds around the creative energy, sexual energy, because they're the same thing. So if you demonize sexual energy, you're demonizing creative energy, which is anti-life. And we don't want that. And then I'm going to leave you with an aligned action, as always, and a closing up of this 12-episode series, Discouraged to Willing. Sounds good? Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. So, the symbol of the flame of fire. Whoa, elementally, fire is not just a campfire kind of thing. We're talking about the molten seas in the core of the earth, lava. We're talking about, of course, fire that you see that burns wood, the fire coming out of your stove if you have a gas stove, out of your lighter, out of the match, right? That kind of fire, for sure. There's also the fire in the stars, the sun. And funnily enough, there's also the fire of electricity. We don't often think of electricity as the thing giving life to this device in front of me, for example, or the one that you are watching this on. That too is fire in a different form. So there are many faces to fire. And it has a lot of roles in creation myths, in rituals, in essence, it being a purifying, transformative force. So I have my trusty book of symbols here again, this one. And we have fire. Boom. A few sentences I want to read out to you. Fire enkindles nature in solar heat, stellar brilliance and flashes of lightning, seethes and smoulders in subterranean regions, erupts suddenly in rippling ground fires or soaring infernos. All living things are in some way fertilized, tempered, ripened, or destroyed by forms of fire. In the myth, as in reality, fire sometimes merely destroys, but often destroys so that from the purified residue or ashy essence, a new world may come into being. Another fun little image here I'm going to show you. What's even going on there? Who knows? But that's fire. Anyway, so the fire I've referenced a few times over Discouraged to Willing as like your heart fire, your soul fire, your creative fire. And fire, as I just read out, and obviously not only has creative transformative powers, but also destructive ones. And so referring to the video about what you actually fear is your success, a lot of the time this fear is connected to us fearing the immensity, the profundity of our power. We fear not only just the destructive side, but we fear the creative side. Where are the limits? What would possibly happen if I stepped into my full power? What would have to be let go of for me to step into that? Right? Where there is creation, there is destruction of some kind. And not so much in a super obvious, like house burns down kind of way, but in a, where there is a rebirth, where there is life, there is death. Where there is an inhale, there is an exhale. Where there is an embracing of something new and fresh that takes space, sometimes other things need to be let go of. Where there is the endeavoring to be holistically healthy, other things, other habits that don't align with that are let go of. There's a death, right? So fire really teaches us about that innate cycle of life, right? Woven in the fabric of our existence is this cycle of life, death, and rebirth. So how does that connect us to the fact that it only takes one? It only takes one flame to light a fire. I know for myself, there was this whole idea that in order to be a force of transformation, of benevolence, of contribution in this world, in order to heal and do all the things, that process of transformation, that internal alchemy with the fire needed to be like huge suffering and really hard and trials and tribulations and like, woo. And yeah, sometimes, I'm not saying there are no trials and tribulations, definitely not, there definitely are. However, along the journey, it's sort of, especially as I was doing more ancestral healing work, the beautiful practitioner that I was receiving work from, she said to me that it only takes one. In our circle, with the Yoruba tradition, we really recognize that it only takes one. It only takes one person in the line of dysfunction, for example, to be like, no, this ends with me. And it might seem insignificant, just one person, right? But it's not. Think of how many generations of people were affected by that one person way back when with this huge trauma that was unresolved, and it gets passed on through the generations. So one person makes a huge difference. And in this work, she helped me to understand as well that healing, transformation doesn't always need to be so intricately, there we go, intricately bound to this notion of it needs to be hard, there needs to be immense suffering. It's like, that's not always the case. You know, you can think of that transformation as like a violent red flame devouring the forest. Or you can think of the fire of transformation of you, of your light, of your path, as a blue flame, a violet flame of purification, of transmutation. So know that with fire, it has so many faces and forms. And so it only takes one, right? You as that force of change, you as the change maker, in order for you to step into that, referring to that quote at the beginning, in order for you to turn that ship around and take self-responsibility, maybe the red flame that is destroying everything in its path, that AKA everything's so hard, it needs to be totally challenged and suffering all the time, like maybe that's actually not going to be useful for you to make the change that you want to make in your life and step into your soul's path and your personal medicine, your soul's divine path, whatever word you want to use. Maybe that going within to do the inner work, that's more of a blue flame. That's more of the purifying flame within, burns off the toxic thoughts, burns away the stuck emotions, and so you're born anew. The phoenix rises from the ashes, a new world is created. That world being you and your personal universe. So there's a lot to say about fire, but essentially leading into more of the theme of this video, the fire helps us purify from us, from this story of us, the stories, the traumas, the burdens of our forebears, for example, that have been woven into our being, so that we can embrace and welcome and breathe in the blessings, the line of life force and love from our lineage. So we become a fulcrum for healing, a fulcrum of creativity. And this isn't just bound to ancestral healing. I'm just using this as the example right now because that's a big reason why this video is titled the way that it is from the work that I've been doing lately. But the core of it is the personal responsibility, personal accountability to enact the change, to activate that blue flame, that violet flame of transformation and transmutation, so that you can take and absorb the goodness from discouraged to willing, for example, and turn that flame, that awareness, that light, that wisdom within, and then put into practice. Seemingly small decisions can have far-reaching implications, setting the stage for a much deeper exploration and responsibility. Okay? And we'll touch more on the self-responsibility part, so that'll be in the next section. So again, the whole notion of it only takes one flame to light a fire. And touching more onto this whole notion of the power of one, this isn't undermining that there is oneness in a collective, like there can still be a shared vision and so on. So for the sake of this video, we're focusing in on the concentric circle of you as the individual rather than the one of the collective. Okay. So yeah, a question for you. Do you feel bogged down somehow by this belief that you can't make a difference just being one person? Do you feel insignificant? Do you feel helpless or hopeless? Do you feel like you are waiting for some outside thing to shift so that you can shift? Just notice. That's okay. Whatever the answer is. I have a little anecdote or story, so to speak, from another human who I've been spending time with. And he's one of my teachers, I guess you could call him. And he used to do a lot of ceremonial medicine work and was initiated for years and the whole stories. But anyway, I want to share this story to illustrate how really one person can make a massive ripple. So he used to, so he worked with this person who approached him and asked to receive work from him. And this guy used to work on an oil rig for a big oil company. And ethically, he was like, I don't even know, this is not, like, it pays really well, but I feel kind of fucked up about it, like it's an oil rig, you know. And after the time spent with, we'll call him my teacher, one of them, this guy ended up being initiated to within this particular work. And back in his country of origin, he started step by step sharing this with more people, assisting them in their own personal transformations, and ended up working with thousands of people all around the world. And so even the mother of this guy reached out to him and was like, thank you so much. You have literally transformed my entire family for the better. So on a micro scale, the family shifts, this guy shifts, and then the way that he shows up in the world and the work that he's offering to the world sends ripples and ripples and ripples of transformation. Because it's not just that one guy that he worked with. It was that one guy who then worked with thousands of other people. Ripples of change, you see? One flame, huge fire. There's a study called the 100th monkey effect. You might have heard of it, but essentially it's a study dating back to the 1950s, early 1950s, on a Japanese island. And researchers followed the behavior of particular monkeys. One of them they noticed was a female monkey who, for some reason, decided to wash off the dirt of the potatoes that they would eat before eating them. Previously, it would just be all the dirt with the potatoes in the mouth, right? But this one monkey was like, you know what? I'm going to wash my potato in the stream and then I'm going to eat it. Fuck the dirt. So what they found out was that the other monkeys were observing this. And monkey by monkey, particularly the young, taking it on first, they started replicating this behavior. And so then this behavioral change spread throughout the monkey family, the group of them. It might not be exactly the 100th monkey because Lord knows how they would have tracked that. But they said around the 100th monkey, this new idea transformed into being a kind of norm that the rest of them started replicating. So most of the monkeys on that island started washing their potatoes before eating them, even if they hadn't had direct contact with the initial monkey that did that. And so the so-called monkey number 100 became a representation of this sort of critical mass that was reached, a tipping point of change. Right? So you feel the similarity of what we're speaking about here. It might not be you individually that makes all the other monkeys wash their potatoes before eating them, but you doing you influences the people closer in your field, and the people who are closer in your field then influence the people in their field, and so on and so on. widespread acceptance of a thing, right, that takes time. And especially, oh my God, so many tongue twisters, especially if there are older generations who are more fixed and rigid with their ideals and their ways of doing things, right? A lot of the time, there needs to be some sort of welcoming of the younger generations and their innovation. So there's that piece. And the researchers concluded that one's actions, one's ideas are a vital step towards change, right? Though this idea, this one action must be accompanied also by an active communication and concrete actions, tangible actions in order to affect the real transformation. So that's what I was speaking to. There's willingness, but in order for that to amount to something, there needs to be that action. In order for the flame to catch to the fire, we got to bring the flame, the inspiration into reality. So, excuse me as I sip some water. So each individual contribution is crucial. Just because there's some things that need to happen in order for that to be a widespread change, it's got to start somewhere, right? You could be that somewhere based on what you do, based on your ideas, and you planting that seed. Like, it's grassroots at the beginning, right? But who's to say that even something you said in one conversation didn't change the life of someone forever, thus altering even the trajectory of their life? There's so much that we don't know or don't have close access to of the influence that we are already making in the world, for better or for worse, right? The fire can still destroy. It's not always a creative force. So also be aware of that. So here comes that necessary element of self-responsibility. There's a quote I want to read out to you guys from Jim Tolles, and it goes like this. It's a very humbling thing to see how little worldly influence we possess at times, but it can help to develop the humility that is needed to let go of what we don't influence and take responsibility for what we do. Because we do make choices about the words we say to others, we make choices about the actions that we take, and those choices have ramifications. If we cheat others to make money, we are ultimately cheating ourselves. We'll very likely attract more cheaters into our lives. End quote. Like attracts like. So your flame is infectious. It's contagious, right? People come into resonance with that who are resonating in a similar vibe as your flame, for better or for worse, okay? So I'm also bringing your attention to not just the light and the beauty of it, but let's not bypass the shadow side, okay? Self-responsibility also means being aware of the consequences of our actions. One thing that we do sets up cycles in time, for better or for worse. So just let that percolate for a sec. You already know this. A lot of the time when we understand something or we hear something, it's like a flash of remembrance. It's like, oh yeah, like I already know that. Okay, so we're constantly remembering as we're learning, which is really beautiful. The path of embodied authenticity and creative sovereignty begins with taking personal responsibility. Okay, that's just the fact. And what is responsibility? It's the ability to respond. It's being response able. It's being able to know what our crap is and to take ownership of that, to recognize it, to not deny it or shadow project it. So that's the going within aspect in many ways. Personal responsibility means we stop looking for external authority figures or permission slips or forms of escapism. We're able to see ourselves more clearly. And when we know ourselves, we know what our weak points are a little more, we know what our strengths are a little more, And then our actions can be, influenced by that. How we show up can be influenced by that. If we have a tendency to just get really stressed in collective environments, then okay, that's a good thing to know. We won't then hate ourselves if we're feeling stressed in collective environments. We'll just be like, okay, for myself, maybe I need to put headphones on, or maybe I won't go into collective spaces all the time like I used to before I realized this. I'll spend more time on the land. Like maybe I'll move out of the city, So personal responsibility is owning your stuff, not judging yourself or shaming yourself for it, but then learning the recipe, the flavor of you and what you need. What someone else needs might not be what you need, and what you need might not be what someone else needs. What's good for you might not be good for them. It's all relative, right? And so that's also you taking self-responsibility, because you recognize the relativity of things. So you stop harmonizing with everyone. And why is this not good for me if it's good for like 5 other people? Well, it's just not. And you honoring your flame means that you don't reject yourself. You don't deny that. Avoiding responsibility makes stuff hard. Even if in that moment we're like, oh wait, it's way easier to avoid this responsibility right now. Sure, there might be some like short-term temporary relief, but it's short-term and it's temporary, okay? Taking self-responsibility also means having a longer-term horizon, not just short-term all the time. We still need the short-term, okay? But we also need the long-term awareness as well. So avoid that cycle of pain, okay? Taking responsibility, that's where it's at. And the scope of this video is not so super focused on all the steps and all the ways to take self-responsibility, okay? That's a very nuanced thing. It's probably a good idea that I film a video about it at some point, but for the sake of this video, just know that that is highly important. And when you do take self-responsibility, which is honoring your flame and its unique shape and color and form, this actually opens you up to be able to co-create. Why co-creating? Because it's your flame with another's flame, and you're not trying to be their flame and they're not trying to be your flame, so you guys can come together and alchemize something new. Cool, right? Taking self-responsibility is also making a commitment to the path, a commitment to your change, a commitment to the journey, which will be inevitably hard at some points, which will inevitably take probably longer than you think it would, because it's actually a lifelong journey. So a commitment to the process, a commitment to you being you and the truest, most whole version of you honoring your soul fire, of you honoring your flame and your heart's desires. You got to commit to that, because the default is not often authenticity. The default is, in most cases, conformity. And conformity often dulls our flame if we let it. Commitment to this transformation may require that purifying flame to burn off what no longer serves you. Okay, so there's a necessary life and death within this process, okay? And when we accept that, we can learn from our mistakes, knowing that they're not really mistakes, they're learning blocks. We then recognize that we can make conscious decisions instead of just acting impulsively all the time, whatever it might be. Taking responsibility means that we stop looking for some kind of easy way out. Recognizing that true power comes from within. True power doesn't come from doing what the other flame's doing because you don't really know who your flame is and that seems to be working for them, so maybe it works for me. That's a kind of escapism. That's a kind of avoidance of your soul fire. And again, taking self-responsibility means that you cultivate patience. Just like a seed requires the right conditions to sprout, your soul growth is a gradual process that unfolds in time. Okay? And kind of circling back to the 100th monkey, what that study showed us is that we don't necessarily have the power or capacity to, anchor in global stage change and just like that. But we do have the power to change the way that we show up in the world, how we relate to life, how we relate to the other, how we relate to ourselves. And I'm not saying that there isn't some kind of critical mass, I don't have a lot of backed up evidence, so to speak, of that. There's a felt sense that there is truth to this, but it's not something that one who takes self-responsibility is just passively waiting for. No, self-responsibility is a proactive process. So, power to you, okay? Moving on to the key of communication. Our voice, right? How we speak ourselves into the world. Word, exactly. Words are so much more powerful than we've ever been taught. And we use our words a lot of the time just super willy-nilly, not recognizing the power of the words that we speak into creation, not recognizing that the words that we speak are speaking things into creation. If we constantly tell someone that, oh, I'm so bad at this, oh, I'm so bad at that, the more that you are speaking how you are so bad at this and that into creation. Words are spells. So what spells are you casting with your words? When I learnt this, I was like, what? Oh my goodness. There's massive self-responsibility that comes with that realization. There's a massive awareness of what you speak out. Knowing that your words can also create cycles in time. And do you want to be part of that cycle? Maybe you don't. The throat is the seed of our blueprint, from one field of thought. Many actually. And what is our blueprint? That's our destiny. There's a lot happening here. So communication is key. It's a massive way that we bring the light of our soul into this world. How we collaborate or not. What is the feedback loop that we're receiving from what we're speaking into creation? And then what are we receiving from that? What are we telling ourselves about ourselves or the world? Communication is the difference even between missing the spark of genius in yourself or another or not. A spark that if nurtured, if understood, right? So the communication comes in of not just assuming or speaking up about a thing. That spark could be a massive seed of change. Communication allows for us to learn about ourselves, to receive constructive criticism, to receive feedback, to give feedback, to sing, to connect intimately, authentically. If you strip it back, language, right, the words that I'm speaking, you get it, you get what I'm saying. But if you really think about it, words are just very, very particular sounds. What is happening? I'm just speaking sound, frequency. So even just that, that sound, that frequency still carries a particular power, a particular meaning. So when we're speaking about it only takes one, about that one flame being the thing that can create the fire, there's a necessary recognizing that everyone's fire can ignite everyone else's fire. even if they seem completely different. That's plurality. And there's a real social stigma around speaking up and being too different, and there's a lot of marginalization, right? And I want to challenge you to rethink the perceptions that you have of speaking up as an act of courage, not as an act of defiance necessarily. Okay, so your voice is so powerful. And the more that you speak authentically, the more you are anchoring your soul's power and essence and beauty into your body and into this world through your voice, through the frequencies that you are pulsing out into the world. So this leads me on into confidence as a catalyst. Do you feel confident sharing your thoughts with the world? Do you feel confident choosing what you want to wear in the morning without thinking about what people are going to think of you? Do you feel confident sharing things with people that you don't know too well? Do you feel confident that this unique flavor that is me is enough? It's worthwhile. I don't need to try to be someone else. There is a real intricate relationship between our embodied sense of self-esteem and confidence and its impact on others. Think about it. If your flame can ignite the flame of another, then that means that if your flame is shining bright because you have authentic embodied confidence, then that's going to be that matchstick that lights their matchstick. Empowered people naturally draw others also into their orbit, which can create a supportive and dynamic field of relationship and opportunities. Okay? And we can think of the fire, right? Coming back to the symbol of fire, the element of fire, more metaphysically, the fire of passion. Okay? That passion, that creative passion, that's super contagious. Have you been around really passionate people and you're like, whoa, I just feel so inspired. I don't even know what I want to create, but I just want to create something. Or whoa, this thing that I've sort of swept under the rug is this thing I might get to. What am I talking about? That's super important to me. I want to pull that out and start working on it. Because if that person can live and breathe their soul into things that they're doing and they're passionate about life, even when it gets challenging, they're passionate to be alive because they know themselves and they own themselves. Yeah, I want that. I want some of that. One flame can ignite a fire. So how to build confidence? Probably another huge series, or at least a video. There's a lot that comes, confidence basically emerges as we step more into our authentic selves and do the work to be able to do that, which is the inner work, right? The turning that flame to the inside and purifying and creating the space for our true self. So check out the videos that I have on this channel about authenticity. But there's also tools, right? There is a toolkit that you can build for yourself to cultivate confidence. A toolkit of setting achievable goals. So when you achieve those goals, boom, you put energy into the confidence bank account. A tool of practicing self-compassion, which in a micro moment could be you make what you would deem a mistake, and instead of slipping into self-hatred spiral, you activate the observer and you see it as just something that has happened, which is igniting a certain response, but objectively, we're all right here. You're learning. And how do you do that? You cultivate a meditation practice or anything that helps you access the observer and self-awareness. You do things that align with your values, that align with things that you're actually interested in. Just by doing the thing, you're subcommunicating to yourself that I'm enough. what I like matters. So you emerge more into an authentic being and thereby gain more confidence. It's not always a one-to-one, okay? It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but there are principles. The main thing is that you take small, consistent steps towards things that make you feel empowered without it being a permission slip to be an asshole. That's not what I'm saying, right? But you have a sense of that, a lot of the time we're just remembering, right? Like, you already know this. And if you're like, I didn't know this, part of you did. And if you're like, yeah, I knew this. Exactly. Sometimes we need a reminder. This is a muscle that we build in time, okay? Like with everything. Moving on. Let us speak about breaking the chains of shame and shaming, which extinguishes your fire. So, shame is a tender topic because it's very real that there is very systemic, intergenerational patterns of shaming and toxic shame, okay? And that's not a one night, overnight quick fix. Some people, that's a wound they carry their entire life if they don't, start to address it. So I'm not explicitly talking about that because that's huge. I'm also not excluding that. It's part of it. But on a more cultural level, there are themes that we've seen on the global stage. Themes of conformity, themes of silencing and censorship, themes of marginalization, racism, ableism, ageism, speciesism, classism, whatever ism you want. This being a marginalization, right? And so that collective narrative, that collective process, that will still affect the people in that collective, and that ripples through time. So there are real impacts that have landed in our life, leaving a feeling of unworthiness, and that unworthiness extinguishes your flame or dims it. There are real consequences of this silencing, this marginalization, this shaming on the global stage and closer in the fractal, in your own family, in your own school, in your friendship circles. The top filters down into the bottom, right? So those consequences we can experience as finding it really hard to find meaningful work or get work. Finding it hard to have meaningful, intimate, authentic relationships, partnerships, friendships. Finding it hard to even heal and know who we truly are. Because there's a deep part of us that fears being who we truly are because it's been shamed collectively on some kind of level, systemically. Finding it hard to self-actualize, to creatively actualize, to create what we want to create in this life. So it's really important to acknowledge this on some level, even if it feels sort of far out. Acknowledge that the bigger things have had also an influence on how easy it is for you to even fully own your flame. It's also an invitation, as I say a lot, to not make this super duper personalized and, oh my God, this is only afflicting me and so I have to be the one who changes this whole thing. Not to say that you don't take self-responsibility for your life and how you show up in the world. No, absolutely you do that. However, there is a piece on a systemic thing also influencing you that can't necessarily just be fixed with one person. Systemic issue needs systemic support in order to do the changing. So kind of bringing us back to the whole point, that's still got to start somewhere. One by one by one by one. And in the family constellations work, for example, you pass the stuff back that is not yours, that you inherited through your lineage, that is afflicting you negatively, because it can't just be fixed with you. You got to pass it back, and the lineage has got to take responsibility for the theme of the lineage, right? Be it rage, poverty, sexual abuse, like, right? I'm not going to go too much into that right now. So know that that's a thing, okay? And this also assists you in breaking those chains of shaming, of suppression of your light. And there's a lot of healing that can come through expression. Remember the voice. Not even just the voice, but expression through movement, through the way that you decide to show up in the world, the way that you engage with the world, how you feel when you wake up in the morning, and how you decide to feel when you wake up in the morning, how you prepare your food, what you eat, how you communicate with others, what you wear, where you decide to work, where you are living. This is all you still expressing yourself somehow. And maybe it seems kind of unconscious, but, you're still there somehow. So the expression is actually the opposite to depression. We think of the opposite of depression as joy, but it's actually expression. So to break away from that cloud of heaviness, the thing that's trying to dull our light, expression is what assists you in burning that off. Expression can come through storytelling. It can come through painting, singing, dancing, whatever your creative medium might be. It can come through endless ways, okay? And so the expression can also be held in a more therapeutic setting. That therapeutic setting being in a session, but also sharing circles, right? Ways, essentially the expression, kind of like communication, is the thing that fosters connection and helps us to connect to a shared experience, so that we all recognize that we're not the exception. Like, I think I'm just the one afflicted by this, but whoa, you who I totally projected wasn't afflicted by this at all, you're also experiencing this? Interesting. So there's power in vulnerability. Absolute power. So, a little bit about creating a collective fire, right? What does that mean? Love amplifies love. Passion amplifies passion. Inspiration amplifies inspiration. Creativity amplifies creativity. When one person embodies that love, that passion, that creativity, the people around them are also benevolently influenced by that. And it encourages them to do the same. You're like a potentiator. Being like, yo, I was cutting the stuff down in the forest, like macheting my own path, and I found this door. And even though it took me a lot of effort to find this door, look, here's the door. I made it so much easier for you to open the door for yourself. That's what I mean by potentiator. And that doesn't mean that they don't have to go through the necessary initiations in order to authentically be able to reach the point where they can open the door. But you do make it easier somehow. And so as part of a collective fire, like, there is a power also to like collective ritualize sort of space. Have you ever been to a music festival? That's also kind of like a ritualized collective space outside of regular time, outside of regular routine. And in this space, in these gatherings, in these ceremonies, in these conferences, these workshops, these retreats, whatever this collective thing might be, it's almost like incidentally, people have just like dropped some of the masks. They've dropped some of the pretense because they're outside of their regular flow. And so then in that space, we get access to a potential, to discover who we are in a different setting, to play with flow toys, to dance in a different way, to improvise, sing at a jam, to host a workshop, right? To attend a bunch of workshops or in retreats, to dive deep in a really safe container, to unlock parts of ourselves that we weren't able to access in the regular routine and flow of things. So these things are really important to help us even know what our flame is and be able to shine it brighter, held by the crucible of this collective ritual space in some sort. Culturally in the West, like, this isn't so much of a thing, you know, it's other cultures from around the world, like it's a thing that they have this ritualized space of music, of ceremony, of dance, of ritual. And the whole collective just goes through this alchemical process. They're reset, they're refreshed, this connection. Okay, so that's still accessible to us. It just looks a little different. But it's almost like as a human, we need this. We crave this time to be in a transcendent state, to be outside of regular world reality. So don't suppress that. You can actualize that in a healthy way by attending super good, you know, idealistically gatherings that are based on some good foundations, you know. But accessing yourself in these spaces which are more supportive of that, which are less about this exact box and you got to fit the thing, and more like, go explore, right? Find your flow, meet new people, have interesting conversations. In the regular world, where are those spaces? Like, we have parks and stuff like that, maybe some other spaces, but it's not like oftentimes we're walking out into the world and it's a container which is welcoming that kind of engagement, that kind of self-expression, that kind of exploration. A lot of the time, not all the time, you know, I've lived in Berlin and that is way more like that kind of crucible a lot of the time, but also not. Okay, generally speaking, in the modern way of things, we're just a little bit more closed and going about what we need to do. So yeah, I won't say too much more about the collective rituals so that we can start a collective fire, but love amplifies love. Creativity amplifies creativity. You know, remember that it also starts with you. So, moving on. I want to speak now about the important reframing of our relationship with sexual energy by understanding that it is creative energy. And the modern world and previous cycles, old religion and this sort of dogma, has totally demonized this. And so there's a lot of shame and repression around this energy, which then stifles our self-expression, our creative expression. And that's a collective wound, right? It doesn't just exist within you. How often do we recognize that creative energy, the thing that animates you as you show up into the world and bring through ideas or paint on a canvas, whatever it might be? How often do we realize that that is sexual energy? Sexual energy is what created you. It brings the two things together and pew, life. And so then, by extension, this is life force energy. A stigmatization of sexual energy is anti-life. That leads to mass scale anxiety, depression, all the things. Because we're shutting off an animate force of nature that gives us the permission to be our true self. I'm not saying that this is like anyone who's got access to their sexual energy is just super promiscuous and leaky and slutty, and no, I'm not saying that. If you want to be a slut, go do that. I support you if that is in alignment with your true self, right? But that's not what I mean when I'm saying sexual energy. I am saying that the sexual energy, if embraced, if accepted, if channeled, also gives us the permission to embrace our heart's desires, to allow pleasure into our life. Follow your bliss, right? And the path of following your bliss is the path to authenticity a lot of the time. So, embracing pleasure in all its forms is a fundamental human experience. Allowing ourselves to experience joy and pleasure and sensuality is not just a personal journey, but a collective necessity. A collective that is stifled and constricted and repressed and shamed. I don't even want to say it, but you feel how that is, and it exists already. Okay, it's not like this doesn't exist. Like it's there. A lot of the time, we're already living through that, and we're already trying to unpick that. When there is a suppression of sexual creative energy, there is a suppression of life, there is a suppression of connection, there is a suppression of innovation and inspiration and that feeling. In its place is rules and regulations and conformity expectations and no room for difference in its extreme form, yeah. So how can you follow your bliss, if you feel bad about enjoying things, if you feel shame, if you feel passion? How can you do that? That's hard. So this is a really important point that we don't speak about a lot, or at least have the frameworks to be able to speak about this. So I hope that plants a nice seed. And ideally, we have safer environments collectively for us to explore our heart's desires, to explore boundaries, to foster acceptance and understanding, so that things that are less spoken about are spoken about, and ways of experiencing the world and discovering who we truly are more accepted rather than judged or suppressed, right? So may that be an invitation to explore what pleasure is to you, to start to give space, if you haven't already, to what lights up my heart, what makes my soul sing, what is pleasure to me, right? I'm not even just talking about sexual pleasure, yeah? All forms of pleasure. But what is pleasure to you? How much pleasure is in your life? Do you feel awkward with me even saying that word? Do you feel like, oh, I feel uncomfortable with that. That hits in a strange spot. I feel awkward just thinking about it, right? Notice that too. The point undercurrent of that is that the flame of passion, right? The fire, the passion, the creativity, the spark of innovation, these are all energies that are very connected. If you give space to that, you're feeding your fire. You're feeding your flame. And know that when you courageously step into that and you embrace that and you express your true self and your desires, well, you express boundaries too. That's also your authentic self. This ultimately can light a flame in others and moving towards a more vibrant and liberated culture. How cool. Okay. So that's why it only takes one. It's got to start somewhere. And know that you hearing that, you're not just the only one hearing these words. Know that these words are also being received by another whose flame might be a little bit more, I can shine. So there are ripples, right? Even just from this video. Whether it's a big ripple or a relatively small ripple, I don't mind, because I'm shining my light here, and that's what feels right. Not being too attached to that outcome, but just doing what feels right. Okay, so may you do what feels a little more right to you, in whatever way that is, big or small. Know that your flame has the capacity to light a fire, maybe in ways that you didn't expect, and that fire being a benevolent force of change, of transformation. That fire might get rid of things that don't serve the highest good. So be it. Okay? Own your violet flame of transformation. Okay? So, that has led us to your aligned action. Your last aligned action for discouraged to willing. So beautiful. But definitely not your last aligned action from this channel. Okay? I love the aligned actions. So the passion project continues. You've brain blossomed. You've selected your medium, your time frame, and your theme. By now, if you watched the last one and you followed the aligned action, you've already invested at least 2 hours into your passion project. So what I want you to do for this aligned action, your invitation, is to anchor time each week for your passion project for the remainder of the time frame that you've decided upon. So if your passion project, you've decided that after this video it has 2 weeks left, then each week put in a 2-hour time block. Whether that 2 hours is 1 hour here, 1 hour here, or 4 30 minutes, or 1 2 hours, or heck, even 3 hours, whatever you have space for. Then do that. Anchor that into your calendar. If you have 5 more weeks, anchor the time block each week for the next 5 weeks. And why? Because I'm not here to tell you exactly what you need to do, because it's your passion project, it's your flame. I'm not going to fully impose my flame onto your flame, okay? But there's a structure, there's a guidance here. And when you do anchor it in time, you're more likely to show up because you've allocated the space. It's there. It's a fresh canvas waiting for you to drop in. So be that flame that lights up your own fire and emanates a glowing light that can illuminate the path for others to open their hearts and their minds and their soul. You're powerful. You're beautiful. You're radiant. Your light matters. From my heart to your heart, I really hope these words land, even in some way, big or small. So that brings us to the end of Discouraged to Willing, 12 out of 12. Yeah. A final note on that, it doesn't end with willingness. You should be feeling a lot more willing, but it doesn't end there. The willingness is the flame a lot of the time. But to keep that flame going, you need resources. And those resources are like putting in the time to devote to your passion. Putting in the time to cultivate the practices that you need in order to be able to be authentic. In order to process the stuff that comes up along the way in terms of emotions or whatever it might be. So the resources are all those things and more, right? So this is what keeps your flame going. How is this all landing? It's a mighty beautiful thing that you made it to the end of this video. And if you've watched all the episodes of Discouraged to Willing, my goodness, we've been on a journey, huh? So that's the end of this series. I want to thank you again for being here, for spending this time with me. I wish you so well on your journey. Feel free to connect to any of the resources I have here on this channel. They are all designed to be supportive of this path, okay? Of you connecting to your truth, to you creating freely, wildly, to being authentic. So, with that, give this video a like for me. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell. Share this with your people if you feel they would benefit from hearing this. And take deep breaths and feel grateful that you have another day to discover who you truly are, to cultivate your flame, to create a fire of change. So much love to you. I will see you in the next one.